Ready? Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, we have some quick announcements. School Board Recognition Week is October 22nd to the 26th, which we have every year. I try to go up and make a presentation to the school board, and I will try to do that again this year. Secondly, we have continued good news is that Irvington once again has won a Platinum Award in the 2018 Community Traffic Safety Awards. I don't know how many years in a row this is that we've gotten that, but I know it's been a while. So congratulations, Chief, and to the department and everyone else that works on keeping us safe. Last announcement I had was that Rocktoberfest was a big success. I think it was the biggest crowds. We're still kind of tallying up all the information, but so far it seems that by all accounts it's going to be it was the most attended and most profitable Rocktoberfest yet. So congratulations to the FACE Committee, Bob Grados, under the leadership of Bob Grados, and of course Joe Archino and the rec department. We couldn't do it without them, literally, and I think it was a great event. There was more kids than ever, and I should also thank Francis O'Shea, who was the co-chair of FACE. But they did a great job. People loved the bands. There was, I think, 10 or 12 food trucks. It was a big day.
Walter's sold out.
They sold out.
Walter's Hot Dog sold out.
Impressive. Anyone else have any announcements?
Yeah, okay. I think it's this Wednesday, right? October 3rd, at the Westchester at County Center. The Army Corps of Engineers, et cetera, are going to be presenting their proposals for the flood and seawater raise containment, the proposals have been fairly controversial, and just recently our board voted to request an extension on the public comment period and also to have more local presentations. It turns out there was one, I think it was in Brooklyn or something last week, and then one scheduled for this Wednesday at the County Center. 2 sessions, one from 3 to 5 and the other from, I want to say 6 to 8. Frankly?
And I'll double check that in just a minute. But if you're interested in hearing more details firsthand about the project or the proposals for the 5 or 6 different approaches for stormwater and surge management, seems like a good place to go. The only thing I'd like to say is that I know I'm planning to go, but you got to remember to take some money with you to pay for parking. Basically, it's the parking areas near as far as I know, all the parking areas. They have some dedicated areas for the center, but I think it's like $5 or $7. I don't know what they're going to be charging if you're, at the tail end of the day. So that's that.
Mark, is it Tuesday or Wednesday?
I think it's
thinking it was
Wednesday.
Tuesday.
Can I double check?
Yes, please do.
So if you want to go on to something else, I'll find
Yeah.
the email and then. So is there any additional announcements? The list of correspondence is actually part of the public hearing on bed and breakfast, so we will save that until we get down there. We'll open up for public comments, not on the agenda. Since no one is jumping up, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Anyone have any questions, comments on this? I just double checked, Connie. I have it in my calendar as Wednesday. At the first session is 3 to 5, and like I said, I think the second one is 6 to 8.
Okay.
And it's coastal storm risk management feasibility study.
No problem.
So if there's nothing on the consent agenda, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, I would like to open the public hearing to consider a local law amending the village code to permit beekeeping in one-family districts. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing's open. Welcome, Mary Ann.
Did you want me to go through the or?
Sure. Or at least, yeah, I think we can just go through it. I was gonna say things that changed, but no, it's just kind of read the law quickly and.
Yeah,
highlights.
I don't think, okay, I'll just go. Well, for one thing, beekeeping is added as a permitted accessory use in one-family residence districts. The thinking being those are really, and not all of them are the ones big enough to have the space that you would need. And then, so it's just listed in the use regulations for the one-family district, but then the regulations are in chapter 83. Now, chapter 83 now, I think, is called animals.
I like those animals and insects.
Animals and insects. And
It's like something my 6-year-old self would have wanted added to our code.
Okay, so the first limitation is on the number of bee colonies. If a lot smaller than 40,000 square feet, no more than 2 bee colonies shall be permitted. On lots 40,000 square feet or greater, no more than 4 are permitted. But irrespective of the size, if all of the hives can be situated at least 200 feet in any direction from all property lines, there's no limit on the number of colonies, as long as it can all be 200 feet from the property line. The location of the hives, they can't be in a required front yard setback, including the front part of the side yard setbacks. They have to be located at least 25 feet from any property line, and the entrance to the hive must face away from the property line closest to the hive. There's requirements about maintenance, that they have to be kept in movable frame hives with adequate space to prevent overcrowding and swarming, and the hives have to be maintained in sound and usable condition. An adequate water supply has to be kept on the lot. It's readily available to the bees. It's got the duties of a beekeeper, to be educated in and strictly adhere to best management practices, to maintain bees and hives in such a way that will prevent diseases, abandonment of the hive by the bee colony, and swarming, and will discourage potential for aggressive behavior. And you have to be able to respond immediately to control bee swarms. There's a registration requirement that the bee hives have to be registered annually with the village, but not permission really, as long as it meets the setback requirements, but you do have to register. And the purpose of the registration is to maintain a record of the number and location of the bee colony, and then also we want certification from each beekeeper that they've read the regulations and read all the regulations. An important part of this is any person intending to maintain a beehive has to notify abutting property owners at least 2 weeks prior to the registration that they intend to maintain a hive, and it provides the way of notification. The thinking here isn't that there's going to be any hearing where these people can come and oppose it because you just get it, but hopefully if they know the hive is coming, and if they know there's going to be a hive there, and they've got an issue, one of their kids is allergic to bees, they can talk to the property owner, whatever, and hopefully work something out. And then there's violations provisions, and pretty much that's it.
I would say my summation of this is the village ordinance or law that I had to do the most personal researching, so I didn't know anything about it. I found out that there's over 21 New York State beekeeper organizations that are listed on the New York State agricultural page. My favorite name is actually not listed on that page, but it's the Empire State Honey Producers Association, which just sounds hysterically funny to me. But this was something that I think we started with almost a blank sheet of knowledge, and I think we filled in a lot of the dots, and safety I think was the thing that we were the most concerned with, and kind of bringing a bunch of bees. I mean, there's obviously a lot of benefits to having bees, and we've had a separate kind of initiative to look at increasing pollinators naturally, but this is obviously an interesting development as well. But it was kind of a interesting ride to figure out this law.
Brian, did you say this was one of the recommendations of the?
I did not.
I was
should.
about to say that.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this.
The comp plan committee actually, one of the recommendations they considered was about beekeeping and chickens. And the overall comprehensive plan committee was comfortable with beekeeping, but not chickens yet. Might get back to chicken. But,
And no goats either.
Very good.
Yeah, we had many articles, we had a lot of adjustments to how this was worded, we
I
had,
read a bunch of local
Right.
laws, not so much New York laws, but other states have been pretty.
and, yeah.
Even the definitions themselves, like,
Yeah.
colony.
We learned a lot.
I think just as an aside comment, beekeeping, it sounds like it might be fun, it sounds like it could be a hobby, but it actually is quite a lot of work. And, I mean, we know at least one former mayor and ex-trustee who was a beekeeper for a number of years, and she can definitely fill you in on how much work it is.
Yeah, I would like to thank her for her help on this.
We're referring to Nikki Coddington.
Nikki Coddington, so. Any other comments from the board? Otherwise, I'll open it up to the public. If anyone has anything on beekeeping? We actually, please.
Evening.
Can you come up to the mic?
Oh, yes.
Thanks. Sorry, Brian.
No problem.
So, good evening. Pleased to see this on the agenda. I just wanted to point out in 83-9 that the responsibility of the beekeeper to respond immediately to control swarming activity. I think it's perfectly reasonable to write that in, but it may behoove the village to have some contacts, maybe from the police or Parks and Rec, that they can contact in the event of a swarm, because even if a beekeeper has their contact information on here, obviously people aren't reachable all the time, and even if they are reachable, when bees swarm, they naturally form colonies up in trees. So very often that swarm will alight 20, 30 feet up in the air. So even if somebody is available to respond, they might not have the means to do so. And that being said, it's just somebody who is knowledgeable and experienced. When colonies swarm, they don't have a home to protect anymore. It's a behavior to find a new home, and aggressive behavior is sort of in response to protecting the hive. So at that point, they're incredibly docile. So it's really somebody with a vacuum or a ladder or something to get them.
sound like you're
knowledgeable about bees.
Well, I think a good takeaway from that, maybe Larry, is to get maybe from Nikki or someone a list of contacts for the IPD just to have on the desk. So we know if they call and someone says, my bees are swarming and I can't do anything, that we at least have some kind of contacts we can listen to, whether it's the
Or the bees are swarming and the person's working on Wall Street.
Yeah,
Pick it up
or away for the
and-
weekend. or
Exactly.
whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Seems wise.
good suggestion.
What was your
name? I'm sorry.
Miles.
Miles. And your last name?
Miles.
Spelled KAMISHER -KOCH.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Miles. Good suggestion. Anyone else, Joe, you want to talk about beehives?
So we just volunteered you to be in charge.
How about pollinators?
It's kind of, related, but.
We got you up on a ladder chasing swarms with a vacuum.
Any other public comments or comment from the board? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Resolved to adopt a local law amending the village code to permit beekeeping in one-family districts. I'll make a motion. If I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
I do think we should have had like a honey tax, though, that we could have gotten some.
We get 1% of all the yield. It goes back to the board. Next, I will make a motion to open a public hearing, consider a local law amending the zoning code to permit bed and breakfast as a special permit use on Broadway and on Main Street. If I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is open. Mary Ann?
Yeah, let me go through this one. Okay, it would be allowed in one-family residence districts, but only on lots fronting on Broadway. and by special permit of the planning board. And the requirements are that the outward appearance be that of a one-family dwelling, and no indication that it's a bed and breakfast establishment from the exterior of the building except for a sign. The operator of the bed and breakfast has to be the owner of the premises and a full-time resident of their premises or of an adjacent property. The maximum number of bedrooms that are available to overnight guests shall be 5. It could be less. Somebody could even come in with 5, and the planning board says, we don't think that's too many for that lot. They can make it 4. The maximum length of stay for guests is 15 nights. Meal service is limited to a morning meal, served only overnight after the D&D, and snacks and beverages are not considered meals. Cooking facilities other than an electric coffee pot are permitted. The residence in which there's a B&B shall not also have an accessory apartment. Parking requirements is there has to be 1 off-street parking space provided per bedroom. And that's the parking requirement in addition to the parking requirement for the house itself. The parking need not be located on the same lot as the bed and breakfast, so if you could, rent a space from somebody else, there has to be a space available. And the planning board will determine that the required number of parking spaces can be provided in a safe manner, and so as not to be a nuisance or burden for residents of adjacent and surrounding lots. The sign is allowed would be a freestanding, indirectly illuminated identification sign. It can't exceed 4 square feet per side and has to be placed at least 10 feet from the property line. The applicant has to demonstrate that the proposed bed and breakfast complies with the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code and any other applicable code and regulations. It's subject to periodic inspections by the building department and the fire inspector. The special permit, there's a limitation on it for 5 years to be renewed for additional 5 years. And then they're also allowed in business districts, lots fronting on Main Street, also by special permit. And they're pretty much the same requirements as for the ones on Broadway, except that there's no requirement that the outward appearance shall be of a one-family house. It might actually look like a B&B establishment, like an inn. And there's also a different parking requirement. So rather than requiring a certain number of spaces per bedroom, because Main Street area there isn't necessarily parking, and they may not need parking if what they're doing is attracting people from the who'll be taking the train. So what the planning board has to determine is whether there's going to be sufficient parking so that it's not burdensome to our neighboring residents and businesses. Other than that, the requirements are the same as for the ones on Broadway. That there's a change to the sign thing, but I already said what that was.
Well, first Nikki Coddington walked in, and I just wanted to say that you missed yourself being thanked for your help with the beekeeping.
Oh, it's all over.
So,
Got voted down, Becky.
we actually thought you were no help at all.
It was a unanimous vote for bees, so.
Okay.
And I think everyone almost personally thanks you on the board as well, so we appreciate, we had one suggestion that we keep a list handy of people that can deal with swarms in case the person wasn't around.
Yeah.
Give it to the
I
police
think that
on
was
it.
my suggestion, actually.
You did as well? Okay.
Sure,
but,
your phone number.
Yeah, exactly. Nikki's cell phone is given to every sergeant on duty. But yeah, it was just a quick update for you.
Okay,
Sorry.
thanks.
Good summary. I guess I will add that, again, I think you might have mentioned it too, but this was another comp plan recommendation. There's obviously no hotels or any overnight accommodations currently in Irvington, but there had been in the past. This is, when we looked at the comp plan recommendations, this one is obviously a much more formal process and not related to Airbnbs or VRBO or any other short-term rentals. This is a specific use for specific properties, which is why I think we limited it to, say Main Street and Broadway, because, it would be a consistent use potentially. And we wanted to it wasn't traffic on kind of more residential streets.
I was just thinking of the overlap. It's possible that somebody would advertise their their B&B on Airbnb.
Yes, but it's not opening it up to everyone for Airbnb.
No.
And you had one correspondence?
We had two correspondents.
Oh, you had two correspondents.
So I had two quick
Well,
comments.
you guys talk first.
Yeah. Or Larry, you can go first, you got something? So I think the only two things, and one of them did come from the correspondence, is I like the idea of limiting the initial license period, the initial special permit period, just in case there are problems. The suggestion was maybe the initial period should be something like 2 years, and then you go, once the neighborhood is comfortable, whatever, then you go into 5-year renewals after that. And I thought that was a potentially okay thing to do, since we're just getting our toes wet with this, right? And so if there are issues,
So just change to a
5-year
special
permit.
permit for bed and breakfast, that was granted for 2 years and renewed for additional 5 years.
Well, I thought it made a lot of sense, at least, just to allow a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of response time for neighbors in case there really is an issue that needs to be taken care of. The only other thing that's occurred to me, Marianne, I just wanted to mention, I was thinking about 10-foot setback. I could see that on Broadway, but I don't see that on Main Street. I mean, I can think of a number of places on Main Street that 10-foot setback would be in the living room.
Yeah, so you know what, you can just say that there's one freestanding sign. I don't think on Main Street, actually, you have to specify the location.
No, because it could be on on the front wall, it could be on a fence, whatever.
So all you would have to do is cross out that last sentence and under the section 3 of the law.
Yeah, I have no problem in terms of.
Does everybody agree?
Which,
So Connie, it's on page 3 of the law, at the very
Right.
bottom.
Number 8.
Under
I
signs.
see it, okay.
No, not the whole sentence, okay. The size of the sign shall not exceed 4 square feet per side, and then the sentence there. Not required that it be 10 feet.
Yeah, no, I
There,
think
it's
Mark
also
is
on
right
page
that,
Yeah.
No, it's intended on 2, that's on Broadway.
I think the idea of
I know
Broadway
it's
is
not
just
2,
to keep
but Broadway,
signage
they wanted it.
off the
And I
walls.
just moved everything from Broadway to there, and I don't think it makes, I agree, it doesn't make a lot of sense for Main Street, so.
Also on page 4, section 5, you're amending signs and have that 10-foot, I don't know if that, you want to change it there too. for a second.
can we wait to get the whole
Yeah.
discussion?
Is it on properties on Broadway there? Good suggestions, Mark? Gotcha.
And do we have a problem with section 5? That was the question.
Or can we just add, and size signs should actually, it's 4 square feet, should be placed at least 10 feet from any property lines. or properties
I'm
located
sorry.
on Broadway.
What was the question?
Do we have a problem on page 4, section 5?
Yeah, all you have to do is the size of the sign shall not exceed 4 square feet per side, period. For properties fronting on Broadway, it should be placed at least 10 feet from any property line.
Yep, fine.
Yep, good.
Connie, did you have anything?
No,
I have 2 pieces of correspondence. One, the author is here, so I don't know if you'd rather summarize it or I can.
I was planning on stepping up and
Sure,
summarizing.
that's fine. So then I'll just read the other piece of correspondence first. It's actually very brief. From Michael Bradley. Regarding the proposed local law to conditionally allow bed and breakfast on Broadway and Main Street, I support the law but believe that it is needlessly restricts such establishments to only those 2 streets under any circumstances. Since a bed and breakfast must receive a special permit from the planning board and meet other requirements, I feel the law should allow them on any street. I am sure there are locations other than on Broadway and Main Street where the planning board might find conditions acceptable to the village and neighboring residents. Regards, Michael Bradley, 20 Station Road. Thank you, Michael, for that. I think we kind of saw this as a controlled experiment, and if it, doesn't stop people from, I think it's a good start.
But also add use for those locations.
Yes, I agree. It would make it much more meaningful.
What did you say?
It's an apt use for Broadway and Main Street locations as opposed to neighborhoods.
Simply zoom it up.
Want to go first?
Sure. You go, just go first.
Hi, trustees. My name is Nicholas Moore, 9 Hancock Place, and I'm also the president of APOA. I just thought I'd make a couple of general comments and probably tell you why we are here tonight. And that is, we just want to go ahead and be involved in this sort of process from the onset. You know that we've raised our hand about multiple times about our concerns throughout the village, specifically the park, Ardsley Park that is, regarding commercialization, using residences in the line of Airbnb, VRBO, and even B&B. So we thought that we'd go ahead and sort of get involved in this process, even though we know it doesn't apply to Ardsley Park now. We wonder if this is truly an experiment, if concepts work here. Are they going to be? Is this board going to go ahead and extend this definition, perhaps throughout the whole entire village? One of the sort of general, let Kristen go ahead and address the specifics, and you have a lot of our specifics before you now in written form, which I think is great. But I know it's one of the issues that we've gone ahead and spoken multiple times, but please hear us again. We are concerned about enforcement. We see, again, we all know that we have a bad actor in our park, in our neighborhood, and we have been working with the village closely, but sometimes unproductively, in order to go ahead and have the village ordinance enforced as the way it's written. And we are frightened by this legislation, if it comes to the park, that those enforcement issues may go ahead and rear their head again. So I think that's a fair comment. I know the village is carefully looking at this. Please consider specific enforcement measures, either in the ordinance or conversations with your enforcement arm, which would go ahead and give us the comfort, especially if you are thinking about going ahead and extending this out. You mentioned this is part of the comp plan, the revival of the comp plan, or updating the comp plan. Should we go ahead and also expect other areas of the comp plan to come before the village soon in draft language?
Yes.
And if so, how soon, Brian?
It's hard to say. I mean, these are kind of two of the lower hanging fruit. So
Yeah.
we haven't kind of, I don't think we prioritized the rest of it.
No,
But
we've done a few others, some of the parking things that,
Yeah, we're kind of working our way through it. And if we kind of look at the past, I'd say that the first 18 months are typically when most of it is kind of passed. I mean, each comp plan always has a few things that
Right.
don't get done. It's probably 80% gets done or more. I mean, actually, it's probably more on the last comp plan, but I think what happens is most of the easy ones get done in the beginning, and then there's kind of the 800-pound gorillas that often don't ever get consensus. Like we had, the last one had the rezoning of the waterfront, which kind of turned into a punt, quite a bit anyway. So it's hard to say, but I would say the next 18, from 18 months from when we kind of finished it, most of it will be either in or out.
Can I ask if the village is actively working on draft ordinance language for Airbnb now, at this point?
That was when we've actually, because we knew that there was going to be, multiple sides to it that we haven't put on the front burner, I think is the best way to say it. I think what we've more been doing,
we haven't worked on it.
we've looked at other municipalities, how they've dealt with it.
Yeah.
I think if we thought we could just put our head in the sand and ignore it, we might like to do that. But we've actually found that often if you're kind of the laws by state are interesting because that they, some of them are, if you're kind of quiet on it, it's almost like, then it's just the Wild West, and that's kind of what we found here. I think what we were looking at is kind of making it if it's going to happen anyway, then we'd like to have some kind of, and that's what we talked about, is having some kind of enforcement authority that doesn't revolve around neighbors calling in bad actors, but
Great.
there is an actual process involved that would kind of regulate it rather than just let it happen. Because we've had, not just the bad actor that we're all aware of.
Right.
We've had a couple others that were actually easier to shut down because they weren't necessarily as careful or, kind of.
Or they actually complied, or reacted once they told they were wrong.
Right, or they're, the second or third time they were written up, they said,
Right.
okay, I get it now. So, I think that's where we're coming at it, that it's happening. We go on, we monitor Airbnb, we monitor some of the other sites to see if they're, just to figure out what's going on. I think that's why we'd probably want to do it, so we could actually have more control and not less, because our current codes make it somewhat harder to enforce things. I think that's kind of the angle we've been looking at.
Well, as in the past, we appreciate being heard. We appreciate the cooperation between APOA and the village. So we anticipate that going forward.
No,
And I think Kristen, I hope goes ahead and brings a lot to it.
Yep.
Given some of her background and experience and ability to go ahead and draw, ordinances or language from other municipalities.
And we actually, we took one of her suggestions, and changed the code, so we appreciate the thoughtful comments as well.
Great, so why don't I cede some of my time to Kristen? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, again. First, I would like to reiterate what Nick mentioned. APOA is here to work with the board. I will also say that we are not in favor of bed and breakfasts, more out of a fear that they will infiltrate. That use will be permitted through more areas in the village. But that being said, I thank you for taking the 5-year initial permit period into consideration and considering something less as a more trial period. I think that does help the village and the neighborhoods just respond to any issues, and then the village can retain some more control over what may or may not work in different neighborhoods. The other comment that I raised in my letter, and then I have a few other ones I would like to just mention for your consideration, goes to enforcement with the 15-day limit. We don't know, it appears the way it's written it would be consecutive days, but how do you go about enforcing that if someone were to stay 15 days, take a day off, come back for another 15 days? Is there some type of enforcement mechanism that you think the building inspector or whoever the enforcement agency would be able to actually go in and enforce that type of restriction?
My kind of view on that is if it becomes a de facto apartment is when
Right.
you're going to kind of enforce it. If someone's there 16 days, it's probably not going to be enforced. But if someone's been living there for, the entire first quarter of 2019, that's a lot easier to prove. So I think it's more preventing it becoming kind of like a boarding house as opposed to a B&B, rather than worrying if someone's there 16 or 17 days in the summer or something like that.
Sure. I just, again, does the building department or the village administrator's office have a list? What's the checks and balances there? Do you go and ask for a list every year of who stayed and for how long?
My guess would be, it would be responding to a complaint that, there's been people living at that place for months, and then we have to do an investigation, and I think you'd probably be able to prove someone stayed there longer than 15 days, and you'd be able to get them out. That's how I was anticipating it. It's more solving a problem of it becoming a de facto, boarding house, as opposed to really worrying if someone was there for 18 days because it was a beautiful August and they stayed longer, that kind of thing.
So it's going to be more complaint driven rather than,
correct.
okay, so, all right.
Anyone else chime in? That's how I anticipated it. That's what I kind of got for the 15-day stay limit was kind of, we're not creating boarding houses, we're creating B&Bs.
Right, that's hopefully the intention at least, right?
Yes, exactly.
So a few other comments that I'd like this board to consider is there any consideration about limiting the number of B&Bs in a row, so to speak? Is there a minimum distance between each B&B, or is the village comfortable with having 10 B&Bs line Broadway all in a row?
I think we briefly discussed this at one of our meetings, and we almost kind of said, it's under special permit, so I think if we suddenly had 2 or 3 in a row, we could kind of step in and say, geez, this was wildly successful. So we actually didn't think it would ever become, if we ever get 2 B&Bs in town, period, I think I'd be surprised. So I think it was just something that wasn't a big concern. And I think we also felt that the special permit kind of gives us that relief valve if it suddenly did become an issue and there were like 2 in a row and then, someone applied for another one, maybe that, the neighborhood could say, hey, there's already too many to the planning board. And, I think it's one of those things when, rather than anticipating the issue, we're going to see how much interest there is in this at all.
So Brian, a question there is, without going back and rereading the section, is there specific criteria besides parking and neighborhood disruption?
No, we didn't talk about that, because, it's not up to me, it's up to you guys, but, I guess I'm not sure what the particular concern is, as long as there's enough parking. I'm a big B&B aficionado, not Airbnb, but I stay in B&Bs all around the world, and often, there's one spot in Ireland down in Dingle where there's a bunch in a row, it's lovely,
And I think it depends on the neighborhood.
It's not a downside, and it's not gonna hamper, but if there were 2 next to each other, it's common in Cambridge. It certainly doesn't bring down the look at Cambridge. Cambridge still looks nice when there's a couple of B&Bs. So, I just think it wasn't anything that the board saw as problematic.
Yeah, I think that sums it up.
So, and maybe Marianne, you can help me out here, but with respect to the notice, obviously these are all before the planning board, special use permits, there's a public hearing. I don't know if there is a minimum notification requirement in general, for any special use permit.
Yeah, there are. And the other thing, Kristen, I should have said, there are general requirements for special permit, and it can't be, it can't have, I forget exactly what the language is, but negative impacts on the neighborhood. So I can imagine a situation if there got to be too many and it just didn't seem right anymore, you could say it was negatively impacted, and they could deny it.
Rather than specifically calling it out as specific criteria.
No, and I've got my code here, let me see, because I know there's notice requirements for special permits, because we don't get many special permits, we've got one for Mercy, but there's notice on that.
Sure, I guess my suggestion would be that with this type of use, since it could have an impact on the neighbors directly, but not just the immediately adjacent neighbors, but also those across the street, that you have the radius of notification be at least maybe 250 feet, rather than just the immediately adjacent neighbor being notified.
I think a lot of planning board actions are 200 or 250-foot radius from the property.
And that, I think, would probably be sufficient. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's 200 feet.
Okay, so that should probably...
Yeah, it's got to be noticed at least 15 days. It has to be required to notify any property owners within 200 feet.
Okay, that's for, so that would,
So that's not in here because this refers to the general special permit requirements.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And then I think one of the most significant issues, again, goes back to enforcement. And it's really about the teeth that you have in the law and the potential penalties if you are found to be in violation of, whether it's extremely violating the 15-day requirement or the parking, or you're having huge parties there, who knows. But one thing that, if you're in construction, for instance, the worst thing you have is the building inspector coming and issuing a stop work order. It's not so much the financial penalties of $200 or $250 a day, but it's the actual loss. So here, my suggestion to the board is consider maybe the first violation of the penalty being a revocation of the permit for 6 months. Second violation, maybe it goes up to a year. But there's some real teeth and deterrence for any B&B operator to violate any of the regulations. Because it could work well on Main Street and Broadway, but it needs to be enforced, and If it's going to be a complaint-driven enforcement mechanism, then once that complaint is made and they are found to be in violation, I would strongly recommend a serious penalty, much more than maybe a couple $100s.
Do we call out a specific penalty?
Not in the local law.
Beyond loss of permit?
Because to me, if there, if it turned out that there's someone that stayed there for 25 days, it's probably one thing, but if it was, I think it was a constant, constant violations, they would get their special permit renewed, so I think that would just kill it. Now, it wouldn't be 6 months, it would just be done, would be.
But you'd have to wait the cycle,
I don't know, I think that's, I don't know if that.
as long as you can revoke it.
Yeah, I think that, can you, what's the, again, I'm assuming Mary Ann's reading.
You know what,
reading
I have to
special-
tell you, I have to tell you, I know I haven't done, I don't do enforcement in the village. But I mean, you certainly, if you wanted to add, and there's like general provisions, general enforcement provisions, violations. I don't, if it assuages concerns, I don't think it would be, we've made a few changes anyway, so we should probably not vote on it tonight. I think we should vote on a clean one. And we can put in a penalty.
That penalty up to including immediate revocation of the special permit to operators.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not for
Wait,
the
wait,
first
wait,
line.
No,
Hold
if there's
on.
something egregious, obviously. But,
Hold on, wait, let me see what,
yeah,
the special permit provision, actually, as you said that, it reminded me, hold on a minute, because,
Complaints could be frivolous too.
sure. And it has to be proven.
But that's all done typically during a special permit renewal
Yeah.
review that's done at the planning board.
Yeah, but I'm just envisioning if there's like violation after violation, you keep
Yeah,
going
you
in front of
can't-
the
you don't wanna
judge,
wait
and the
for it.
judge say, special permit's gone.
Takes the axe to the sign.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, there is a provision for revocation, it's not if you don't pay your taxes. So,
That's
you
good
know,
too.
I'll take a look at it, and make sure it's not covered someplace else, I have a feeling, but,
Yeah.
we could just add
Yeah.
a penalty provision.
Yeah, so I am, that's logical, but there are frivolous complaints too. So we don't want to make some frivolous complaint like the iron fist comes down because some neighbor has some frivolous complaint. So it wouldn't be revoked for some very trivial reason.
Well, so what do you?
I'm just,
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but.
I don't know how you work that out, but I'm
What
just,
kind of a provision?
it's not like one little complaint from one person that isn't, has no validity.
I think it's
should
more
shut
saying,
it down.
violations of this, almost spelling it out for the judge or whatever, that,
Exactly.
violations of this code are subject to fines and including up to revocation of the special permit. And then you kind of give it to the judge,
Well, that's what I want to make sure, that we're not asking the planning board to
Yeah.
judge the violations.
Right.
No,
We are
no.
going to the courts.
Yeah, you know what though, I'm not, you're revoking special permits, I'm not sure the court can do that. I don't think there's a penalty the court can do. I think if you want to revoke a special permit, it would have to be
Back to
by
the
the
planning
board that granted it, or the board of trustees could revoke it. But I don't think I don't think the court has the authority to revoke special permits. I'm not sure, but I this hunch.
I would feel very uncomfortable asking the planning board to be an ad hoc judicial forum.
Well,
So that would leave
Board of
us.
Trustees, yeah.
There's
Which
no-
Or your
I'm
zoning
not
board.
as, it's not gonna
Yeah,
happen,
you know,
but
it's just so unlikely to happen, I mean, it's
Yeah,
not like.
if you want to write it in, that it could be referred back to the Board of Trustees for a revocation hearing.
Yeah, let me,
I mean, if there was excessive noise, for instance, what would happen? The police would respond, there would be just like any other
like
place.
any other noise.
Right, exactly.
It's
So
not
there are,
special to this.
right. So there are the same things applying here that apply to problems like a barking dog and,
Right.
so.
And then the
So there are
excessive,
protections there.
but if the excessive noise is excessive, I mean, I don't know how to say
It's
this.
excessive.
You know what I mean? Like it's continual.
Heavy rock concerts in their backyard.
Every
I
weekend.
don't know, you know, if there's persistent violations.
That's what I'm
Yes.
getting at.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about, persistent
Yeah.
violations.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we have the 2-year window up front, but after that, after they've sailed through that 2-year window, then they're on a 5-year horizon.
Can you do this with your neighbors? No, just kidding.
Yeah, let me, you know what, let me,
Figure out a
let me
way to
look
do
to
it.
the
I think you
code
know
for
what we're
other
trying to do.
things that we have in our code, and other, so it's consistent with other things that we have. I mean, I know like in Mercy, we have a provision for that, for what to do if there's violations. We'll try to make it consistent.
Okay, that would be great. And another, you can have, right now it's written as if you could have B&B guests in up to 5 rooms, 5 bedrooms. Does the board have any idea or inventory of how many existing residences along Broadway and Main Street would even have up to, like, how large those homes are? I mean, 5 bedrooms, it's a large, single-family home.
It's up to, so a smaller home could have 2, or 1.
The Ivy
Right.
Fisher house.
But I was curious if you had any handle.
Yeah, right, Broadway.
Broadway's
sure.
got
let's
that.
say,
Yeah.
I don't know that
Definitely.
we have an exact count.
Right.
no.
I don't think we need to know
At
that.
least 1 bedroom.
But I was just wondering
It
if
also
you,
doesn't matter, because if you've got 2 extra bedrooms, you could have the B&B, I mean.
I think the question is one of what's the worst-case density? Is that where you're leading? at?
that's, exactly. Do you have an idea of, if this was hugely successful, what the worst, I can't say it's the worst-case scenario, but the maximum density or the biggest impact to
I
the,
guess it could be every house on Broadway and Main Street.
Again, I think if we have more than 3 or 4 of these, if we have 1 in town, I'll be excited.
Yeah.
So I don't anticipate this being a huge boon to the local economy, but I think it'd be great to be able to have some kind of overnight accommodations in Irvington, because I think there's probably specific places that this would be great. I also don't think most people are going to want to run a bed and breakfast out of their home, so I think it's kind of a limiting thing on its own. Yeah, especially because you have to be an owner occupier, so it's not like you can just buy a house and then run a B&B and live in Chappaqua.
sure, you can live next door or adjacent,
you can
but,
live next door.
But I think in reality, if we start seeing a run on B&Bs, I think the board can always step in and amend the law effectively to create density constraints if we see that it's actually happening. Which would mean that the trigger point is going to be, if we get more than a couple, we're going to have to start
Yeah, that
being
makes
aware
sense.
of where they're located and see if there is kind of a emergent problem. But it's kind of like right now, it's hard to.
Great.
We can always put a
Yeah.
moratorium on it, but there's, not approving any more, we'll figure out the influx of.
I'd just like to see one myself,
Me
you
too.
know.
so I appreciate you taking into consideration the comments we've raised. And again, it really is more out of fear that this use will be permitted elsewhere,
No,
so that the
they're great comments
enforcement.
to consider. It's just that we don't necessarily have a hard and fast answer for some of them.
That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I haven't studied this, but I am in favor of it in general. I remember, I think it was 10 years ago in Business Improvement Committee, we were talking about the desirability of trying to encourage bed and breakfasts. I just have a comment about, or a question about parking. I understand very well the need for not having the neighbors' parking be infringed upon. But it seems to me that for Broadway, because I see you differentiate between Broadway properties and Main Street properties, that in section 2(7)H, no fewer than 1 off-street parking space per bedroom, So you're saying that if it was a very large house on Broadway, they had five bedrooms, they would need 5 additional off-street parking spaces? Which, to me, that seems a little excessive, because it's unlikely that there will be 5 different vehicles for 5 bedrooms. I mean, often if it's a family or something, they might use 2 bedrooms. I don't know, it just seemed like, how many,
Actually, really likely, Nikki.
yeah, but how many big houses have 5 additional parking spaces? I don't know, I'm
Well, if
just,
they don't have 5 bedrooms, then they don't have, then
But they also don't have to be on the premises of the building, they can be something
Right,
that's
okay.
associated.
spaces
And then-
for the churches or something.
and then off-street parking shall be suitably screened from adjacent residential properties, which seems a little vague. And,
That's typically planning board language, I think.
Yeah.
They leave it vague.
Yeah,
so they can-
you have to, because it depends on how far the house is from the neighboring property. If the neighboring property, there's just a lot of green space, well, then maybe you don't need as much screening. But if you're close to the house, you might need more screening,
Or
so that is
fence.
actually the right language.
okay. So, all right. All right.
I think
That's it.
when we talked about need not be located on the same lot, that was important to me, that if you could find someplace else to, let's say, well, take your car there, or take your car there and come back, that made it doable.
Right. Okay.
It's a burden on the owner, but they want to figure it out, they'll figure it out.
And I do understand that the concerns from other areas, especially where there have been other problems, but at the same time, I feel that the goals of this proposed law shouldn't be too badly influenced by violations of another law.
So I thought you were going to come and talk about B and B for bees.
Oh, and I should say that I have no interest in establishing an Airbnb. I can't think of a worse occupation.
You know, like strangers in my house either. I will also say that, you know, I don't think we're anticipating in 6 months from now trying to extend this or expand this anywhere either. Like, you know, to me, this is the law for this group. And, you know, there's kind of nothing else that we're not looking at. There's no, like, you know, phase 2 of this one. Well, it's not, you know, not with this board.
No, I think that the comp plan language stated that, really stated a limitation of the B and Bs to be just in this location.
Right.
Any other public comment? We are going to keep it open, so.
This is Chuck Kerr. I have one other question. Just Broadway, extending all the way from Mercy College to Sunnyside? That's all, so any home along that stretch of Broadway could do this, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, good, thanks.
Anyone else?
Although I do think there is a parking issue for many of them.
Yes, there definitely is.
Otherwise, we'll just keep it open.
So we're keeping the public, any other comments on this? No. Okay. To be continued.
To be continued.
And thank you for your input, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Trustees.
Award of contract for sign manufacturing, 2018-14.
Okay, so the item in front of you is, you're not authorizing funding for purchase of all these signs. What you're authorizing is the manufacturer from whom we will purchase our signs when needed, and there are a couple that are very much needed, like the two in front of Town Hall, for example.
I was going to say $290,000 worth of signs.
Yeah, no, we have to be creative in how we figure out how to actually buy them.
This is for the giant Ardsley Park sign? Is that? They just left. They just left. Kidding, no signs.
Welcome to.
It's gonna look like the Hollywood sign, but say Ardsley Park. But he's bigger. Sorry, Larry.
So these are the signs that were designed by our wayfinding designer. You're aware of that whole project. And so we went out to bid. This is only for sign manufacturing, not for the installation part of it, because we wanted to open up the possibility of any number of companies providing the items, and then we can do the installation locally.
So that would include not just the printing of the signs, but it would include the basic, some of them have more
All the
involved
hardware.
structure, you know, in terms of.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
the mounting or hole digging would be local.
Right.
What is the credit change order?
So during the course of discussions with the two low bidders, there were three, I believe, but the two we dealt with directly, we wanted to, we used our designer to go back and forth with both to make sure that the processes that they were using for the sign manufacturing were acceptable. And during the course of her discussion with the manufacturers, there were some slight changes to the pricing in our favor, none of which changed the order in any way. But after discussing face-to-face the actual layout of the signage and the manufacturing of the signage, there were some price reductions from what was bid. So we're handling it by awarding the bid at the bid prices and then doing a change order for a credit, relatively small.
Yeah, I just thought that was
But yeah.
humorous. So this is according to the type and count of signs that were envisioned in that sign?
Yes, yeah, it tracks the entire inventory that was in that study. So
Including
that-
our new street signs.
Everything that was in the study.
The blue signs are twice as expensive as green signs, by the way.
Is that true?
I've been waiting for 2 years to say
Were there any signs
Yeah.
in addition to the wayfaring signs that are part of this bid, or?
No,
it's all-
only what's in that study, right?
But that does include then the replacement structures at the top of Main or down by the train station
Yes.
for the bulletin board structures.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were part of the wayfaring.
Yeah,
It just
they are.
doesn't,
Not,
it
not,
doesn't include actual, like Jaffrey Park, the road sign per se.
I don't think so.
So that's not, and
Right.
it's not like the parking sign that says no parking, right?
Right,
Those are not part of this.
Right.
It's the whole thing that you and I looked
The
at.
Jaffrey Park is not, what Jaffrey Park sign is there?
You know, when you,
The road sign?
the road signs,
I thought the
home
street
place,
sign-
Jaffrey
oh, there-
Park, any sign
Wasn't
like
it
that
I
is
don't
not
think so.
part of the wayfinding.
I thought that's what I just asked about
Oh,
2 minutes ago, was were the street signs, meaning, sorry.
well,
oh, I thought you meant directional signs.
No,
for
no,
vehicles.
yeah, so no, sorry.
right,
No, not
The
the
corner
names.
street sign, yeah,
Yeah,
the
no.
street name, no, they're not included.
No.
they're not.
That doesn't mean they can't be designed and,
But they're a dime a dozen, you can get them anywhere, I mean, is that?
well, not with the design that we have. It's a few times.
Oh, because we have
They're custom signs. They're
do
not,
we have a clock tower on it or something?
we don't have anything. We don't have a design. I don't believe.
Anyway,
I gotta go back and look at that, I thought we did, okay.
Maybe it was, but we didn't bid it.
Not having been there at the time, did the wayfaring report have an estimate as to what they thought these signs would cost?
They did the specifications essentially, and then that's what this was for, to go out to bid.
she's pretty knowledgeable about,
Oh, she was comfortable with the
yes,
prices, yeah.
just in terms of what requirements the different companies needed to show they could do to be viable for that job. So I think she was a good resource.
Do we know how much we had budgeted for this? We have,
We don't, because they're, right now, we're only using them in specific locations that need them, and in front of Town Hall is obviously one of those locations, because we have no more bulletin boards out front. But we need to have them, well, no, we need to put them in. Well, the old ones, yeah.
You couldn't read? You couldn't read? Oh, no, I wanted something to be there that you could actually read.
Right. There's also
You
signage,
couldn't read through the plexiglass.
right.
Electronic signs.
There's also a kiosk associated with the Aqueduct Crossing project.
Right.
That's another thing that's on the list. So there's specific items.
on the 291,000.
Yeah.
Right.
And these are, the price is probably a little higher than what we anticipated in both of those projects, but that's the design that
It's
was
also a few years later.
adopted, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, we're going to have a sign, free sign for the first B&B on Main Street, right?
Exactly.
Anyway,
Not for the 65th in a row.
Yeah.
Whereas sealed bids were received and opened on July 11, 2018 at 11 a.m. in Village Hall as follows. Signarama from 102 Hudson Drive, Syracuse, New York for $291,520. Express Sign and Neon Company, 1720 West Salson Avenue, Los Angeles, California for $354,840. And North Star Signs, Inc., 66 Clinton Road, Unit A, Fairfield, New Jersey for $535,540. Whereas the village administrator reviewed the bid submitted and determined that the lowest bidder is in order and responsive to the specifications, now therefore be it resolved to award contract 2018-14 for sign manufacturer in the amount of $291,520 to Signarama, and to authorize the village administrator to execute said purchase contract, and further resolved to approve credit change order number 1, contract 2018-14 with Signarama in the amount of $10,100, and to authorize the village administrator to execute said change order. I will make a motion if I get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
I love Signarama.
Signarama made me happy to say it twice. I'm glad they won. And also, you would have to get someone in LA to make it for us.
$200,000 just to shoot.
Authorizing tax certiorari settlement 123 Main Street, Hudson House Tenants Corporation.
So, yeah, so very, very straightforward. This obviously covers a number of years, and as with all of these, we don't have an assessment role of our own. So in large part, we follow the lead of the town of Greenberg, but we do have our counsel, Mary Ann's partner, monitoring the cases and, advocating on our behalf. And this particular one, he finds acceptable.
Which property is this again?
No, wait, it's not Hudson House.
Yeah, I don't understand, the address
Yeah.
is not Hudson House.
Someone's going to Main Street.
Hold on.
I was confused.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
If it's Hudson House, it's not 123
No,
Main Street.
Right. Hold on. Something.
I was thinking the one.
This has to be Hudson House.
Isn't that Hudson?
Yeah, for the amount of it, of the single, you have to be Hudson.
It's
Just have the wrong address.
Yeah, the settlement is Hudson House.
Yeah, it's just the wrong
The address
address.
should be 100 Ardsley Road West, or whatever that
Oh, it
address
is, it is.
It is Hudson House, so
Yeah, I
the
mean,
property
my
address is
building
incorrect.
$14 million,
Yeah, the property address is incorrect, that's all. 123 Main Street is a small
Yeah, right.
piece of property.
Which is very valuable.
I'll
Surprise.
fix that in the resolution, for sure.
It's called Ardsley Avenue.
Yeah.
So
West.
Hudson House's assessment is $13,366,100. To the
Yes.
entire building.
Seems low, right?
It's assessed as a commercial property, so it's based on the rent roll or whatever income the corporation receives. So,
That's what needs.
there's your answer.
That needs to change.
Well,
It's 100 Ardsley Avenue West. I think you guys
Thank you.
guessed that, didn't you?
I think that's what it said, yeah.
My Google machine agrees.
That was quick.
Whereas petitions having been filed by Hudson House Tenants Corp., herein petitioner, challenging real property tax assessments on the village of Irvington and the town of Greenberg's assessment rolls with respect to the subject property for the 2011 through the 2017 tax years. Hudson House Tenants Corp., 100 Ardsley Avenue West, years 2011 to 2016. Whereas petitioner's actions are now pending in Supreme Court, Westchester County, and whereas the town, the village, and the petitioner have reached a mutually agreeable resolution, now therefore, the village is authorized to effectuate a settlement commensurate with the following terms. 2011, reduction per thousand of $50,250. 2012, $44,850. 2013, $20,350. 2014, $35,800. 2015, $41,800. And 2016, when we had the reassessment, $741,100. Proposed settlement for 2016 of $1,200. The Irvington share of the refund is $61,206.90. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? And have we accrued for that one?
We have a budget set aside for it. It's not accrued, but we have a budget.
Okay, that's it, okay.
It wasn't a surprise, in other words.
It's not a surprise, no. We're kept well informed by our council, so almost nothing is a surprise.
And this is a good one.
Oh,
Happy
okay.
one next, which is the award of contract 2017-17 for completion of the firehouse roof. I don't think we want to give history on this one, right? We just have to fix the roof.
Yeah, it's a rebid to get the completion of the roof.
And I'm glad we got 4 people to bid.
Yep.
Whereas bids were received and opened on September 20th, 2018 at 2 p.m. in the Village Hall on an invitation-only basis in accordance with Resolution 2018-33 adopted by the Board of Trustees on April 2nd, 2018 as follows. Armor Tight Construction Corp. of Portchester, New York for $179,000. Barrett Roofs, Inc. of South Hackensack, New Jersey for $189,000. Precision Roofing, Inc. from Southfields, New York for $284,000. And NUA Construction Corporation of Ardsley, New York for $368,000. Whereas the village administrator reviewed the bid submitted and determined that the bid from Armor Tight Construction Corp. is in order, in response to the specifications and in the best interest of the village, now therefore be it resolved to award contract 2017-17, the completion of the firehouse roof to Armor Tight Construction Corp. in the amount of $179,000, and authorize the village administrator to execute said contract. I'll make the motion. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. That's not that far off from the original bid, right?
No, it's not. But,
When do they start?
well, I mean, we have to get bonds and insurance in place, but soon. Everyone knows the urgency.
How did the temporary stuff hold up within this rain?
I think they've been successful in keeping
It's been
water,
dry, it's, yeah.
yeah, out of the,
That's success.
yeah.
Yeah. We had 5 inches of rain in 5 hours. That's about as good a test you can have. Next item is approval of the fire company fundraising letter. Has everyone had a chance to read this?
Have a look at it.
There's a change. I couldn't detect the change, so I wish there was a red line from last
The previous
year's.
one, it seemed pretty much,
It seemed pretty much the same.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
There's nothing in here that says, that they're buying fire trucks or anything. I think that's the.
right, yeah, the purpose of all this is just to make sure that it is as clear as possible, that people understand there's a separation in what the fire company raises money for and the operations of the fire department, which the village funds. That's all.
Resolved to approve the fundraising letter from New York City Fire Company, Inc. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Reports of boards, standing committees, and officers. Trustee liaison reports. Mr. Gilliland?
I do not have anything new or exciting to report at this moment. I see more and more tree wells going in, waiting for the trees. I just wanted to do one call out to DPW and the contractors. They did a wonderful job in front of Mina's,
Yes.
which looked like it was going to be a real problem.
Yeah, that one was as hard as all the others combined.
For a second, I thought Con Ed was doing it, but.
Well, yeah, true. But there was actually a gas main intertwined with the root system of the tree that was there, so it was
It's great.
a bit tricky, but successful.
Recreation Department, okay?
Again, Rec is grateful to the FACE Committee and all staff for all the hard work that went into the success of Oktoberfest. Thanks to Chet, who just left. The Historic Society and the Woods Committee worked together to present Chet's talk and walk on the Stern property in the Irvington Woods yesterday. I was there and it was really good. Chet kept it to roughly an hour, which I compliment him on. It was a great walk. Lots of people, probably 40 people walked, and there were probably 60 that, plus there. Very educational and a lot of fun. The hayride is October 20th in Matheson Park. The Halloween parade is the 28th. Starts at Immaculate Conception and ends at the middle school parking lot.
That's everything?
That's all.
Connie?
All
You mean
right,
the
the
main
water
steps.
department report, reading water meters, summer maintenance of their facilities, fire hydrant flushing in the high service zone, checking water accounts to assist Village Hall with a new billing system. and the DPW Highway Department installing tree wells, to follow up on the comments about the tree wells, assisting the rec department with Rocktoberfest, repairing, rebuilding 2 catch basins on Palliser, cleaning catch basins with the backhaul, assisting the water department with the hauling of fill for the Halsey Pond Dam project, line painting and filling potholes. My other report is just to thank some volunteers. Not this past weekend, but the weekend before, there were visitors to the Tiffany room and to the Tiffany windows in the 2 churches, St. Barnabas and the Presbyterian Church. And that group came, I guess it was about 60 people. So in order to accommodate them, they wanted to hear about the Tiffany room and they wanted to visit the 2 churches. There were volunteers set up who ended up spending quite a few hours, so I wanted to call out those volunteers. Heather Bancroft and Alice Picone were at the Presbyterian Church, and the Hansons were at the Episcopal Church. And down here in Village Hall, Chris Mitchell gave his very good talk in the Tiffany room, and Laura Lillienfield was there, as well as was Rosemary Gatzik from the library. As it turns out, their bus was about 2 hours late, so they never got to the churches, even though the volunteers were ready to show them the windows. But they came in and out of Village Hall, and everybody with good humor dealt with it, and they did enjoy it. So that's my only report.
Cool. Brian, just a quick correction on the Halloween parade, thanks to Mark. It's on the 28th. It starts at Immaculate Conception and goes downhill to the Main Street parking lot,
Yeah.
not uphill to the middle school.
So
You don't want those kids walking uphill.
Always better to go down.
Exactly.
Janice isn't here tonight, and we actually didn't get a full report from the fire department, but they do have their inspection this Saturday. All residents are actually invited to the first part of the inspection, where you can actually inspect the trucks and the equipment. I believe that starts at 7 p.m. At the firehouse. That's all I have for Janice. Village administrators report.
Can I just
Oh, sorry.
ask Larry to fill us in on, so I'm not wrong on the dates, but I seem to recall that something just came around this afternoon about the repaving, milling and repaving of East Sunnyside is on the docket for next week,
Yes,
8th and 9th.
yes.
I just think we should alert people,
That's-
yet another, oh, you were going to do
That's
that?
my report.
Okay. Sorry.
Thunder Stealer.
Starting.
So, as trustee Gilliland mentioned, the village is undertaking the paving of East Sunnyside Lane. It's a joint project with the village of Tarrytown and maybe even a little bit in Greenberg. So that paving, milling is expected to take place on Monday, October 8th. Paving is expected to take place on Tuesday, October 9th. Both days are off days from the school, so if that schedule holds, that would be ideal. Nonetheless, I've coordinated with the school. The
Superintendent's conference today after.
Village of Tarrytown I've coordinated with as well. I believe their police department will be helping with some traffic control. And that's, there's others that I've contacted to get the word out, but there's also the village emails gone out, postings on the website. There's 3 other emails scheduled to go in the next few days. So we also are expecting a variable message sign to be deployed by the town of Greenberg. We have to work on the details of where, and what it's going to say, but we're working on that as well. So I think we're doing the best we can in the week that we were given, basically, to plan for this. But
Will this include the rumble?
we are waiting for a proposal from the paving company, but we expect that they'll be able to do that.
Right. You are all aware of what that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'll let you jump.
That's it.
And in goes the clerk treasurer, which I skipped over. Public comment?
Representing the public.
We appreciate you sticking around.
So I noticed that there's some composting initiative that's going on through the town of Greenberg, and there's a lady, I think her name is Ann Jaffe. She shows up at the farmers market on Sundays and whatever. So, so I had a few years ago I had participated in Dobbs Ferry's environmental open public comment period for environmental planning and stuff. I had suggested that it might be a good idea to do some outreach to local restaurants for getting their food waste and getting that to a composting facility. So I was wondering if that is something that may be possible for the village to encourage. Just the thought is that, like, a lot of people aren't going to take the time and effort to separate food waste in, it shouldn't be discouraged, but I think you'd get a lot more food waste out of all the restaurants we have in the town and neighboring villages and all. And apparently there is a facility in Cortland called Sustainable Materials Management, and they're DEC certified, and they apparently can accept waste from commercial haulers.
So is that the one that just opened?
Apparently so.
Yeah. As we were shipping it much further, apparently, Greenberg was. So yeah, I know they're talking about moving it over to that facility as soon as it's up and running, was my understanding.
Once we're through our, whatever, 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few moving parts with all this. I didn't get your name, I'm sorry.
Jim Carozza.
Okay. I mean, I don't have 100% information on all of this. All I can tell you is at this point, the board has initiated a collection point at the Irvington, at the farmers market on Sundays. There's a limited amount of storage space for the toters. The school has been kind enough to allow us to use that space to collect scraps at the farmers market. We then are paying for a commercial hauler to take it away.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of issues or things that are in flux at this point, and that is there's a potential for the town of Greenberg to take over some sort of town-wide collection of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean collection at the curb, but I mean collection from individual points within the town possibly that the villages could take part in. That was something that was mentioned, but I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the budget process over in Greenberg, because that is a whole separate process from us. If that happens, we may look at piggybacking on that. That may lead to the ability to collect more, but I think at this point, if we were to actively encourage the restaurants, we have no place to store it.
Well, this is what like the next part of this kind of discussion is that I think it would take a meeting of restaurant owners, commercial waste haulers, and the village, and possibly Greenberg, and then this facility, to kind of figure out what would be involved logistically and costs or cost reductions perhaps and whatever. So I mean, I think there's a possibility, but it would have to be an organized thing, because right now they're just going to pick up whatever is put out at, the restaurants put out, and it's unlikely they're going to sort through it, so.
Right, and for the village, the direct cost savings is just reducing the weight of the garbage being taken up to the wheelabrator, right? So
Tipping fees.
Yeah, which is low right now. It's obscenely low right now. So
really,
right? Yeah, it's not. This is not. We don't spend a tremendous amount of money having garbage hauled away. It's under $30 a ton. So there's not a lot of money to be saved, so it's really about the environmental impact.
So we pick up, maybe I'm unaware, but the town picks up the garbage from the restaurants?
Some.
Okay.
Depends on the facility. There's the larger facility down on the waterfront we do not pick up from, but the restaurants on Main Street we do.
Okay. Would it be helpful if I reached out to the facility in Cortland and asked them if they're interested?
Maybe the Green Policy Task Force.
if you work in conjunction maybe with Ann and Green Policy, it makes a lot of sense to get more information.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I could see just whether or not, what kind of buy-in from the restaurants there might be.
Mhm.
And not just restaurants, but like the delis, Jourdain.
Oh, yeah,
Any
absolutely.
food
Yeah.
production. It seems like, I mean, the other thing I'd like to see just is also the other aspect. I know it's, in some villages have them where they actually, I don't think we do here, food is, rather than thrown out, is given to fruit kitchens, you know, like
Yeah,
there's another
yeah.
process where still edible material goes to places where they actually can utilize it directly rather than it becoming immediately garbage, immediately compost. So,
Right, right, right.
So, but yeah,
Does he know Ann's contact, Ann Jaffrey?
I have her email.
Yeah,
so,
'cause
yeah.
I think that would be the
She's definitely the
connection
leading charge on this.
you'd want to
Okay,
make,
yeah.
because she's the green
No, I
policy
have
task
discussed it with her.
This would be kind of the natural next
So-
step.
Yeah.
gathering more information and
Yeah.
seeing, that would make sense. Also, maybe some spot, like I said, spot checking of some of the restaurants to see if, because, you know, you have to process things differently, I guess, inside the restaurant.
Yeah, but, and is there like regular meetings of the Green Task Force? Or how?
They,
I got a
think they
couple other
usually
ideas
have-
as well. As,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think they were planning to have quarterly meetings and then more frequent meetings of kind of like smaller working groups that are looking at very specific topic areas.
Yeah.
Again, I'd say, speak with Ann,
Mhm.
and Leola is the other person who's been working kind of as in the core of the steering committee.
Right.
Do you know her?
I don't think so.
All right, well, I can get you,
I'm sure that if you have a conversation with Ann, they would pull together a meeting to discuss if you have some ideas.
Yeah.
I would venture to guess. I
Yeah,
don't
I'd
know if
say
they don't have regular meetings.
There are 3 or 4 people
Yeah.
that are involved in this more than others.
Yeah,
And she could direct
absolutely.
you, and
Okay.
they'd be very happy, I think, to have additional
Yeah.
involvement
Yep.
with more human beings.
Might as well.
Okay.
You know, the thing is, I kept thinking, oh, I'm probably going to move in a year or whatever, and then 10 years later, I'm still here. So I might as well.
Start working.
I might as well. You know,
Might as well get
contribute.
involved.
Doesn't make it better now,
So,
yeah. You gotta stick around.
We'll appoint you to the committee if you.
All right. Okay, so I'll follow up with Ann.
Great, thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay.
Have a great evening.
All right,
You too.
Any action items, Larry?
I didn't have any, team polite.
Blue street signs.
No. Sorry.
Well, Ardsley, welcome to Ardsley Park signs. I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?